please call the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum?
Council Baker. Councilor Campbell.
Here.
Councilor Siomo. Present. Councilor Edwards. Here. Councilor Sabi George. Present. Councilor Flaherty. Here. Councilor Flynn. Here. Councilor Janey.
Present.
Councilor McCarthy.
Here.
Councilor O'Malley.
Present.
Councilor Presley.
Present.
Councilor Wu. And Councilor Zachem.
Here.
Madam President, we do have a quorum, and Councilor Wu is present.
Awesome. At this time, I would like all colleagues and guests and staff to please rise as Councilor Janey introduces our clergy for the day. I ask guests to please remain standing after the invocation as she will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam President. It is such an honor to bring before you my dear friend, Rahsaan Hall. I first met you, Rahsaan, I don't even remember the year, but it was Reverend Groover who introduced us. And Reverend Groover is the pastor of Charles Street AME Church, and he lives in my district. And I was doing some organizing work with the churches around education, and he introduced us. And ever since then, I have been blessed to work in partnership with you in your current role as the founding director of the Racial Justice Project at the ACLU. Prior to that, as deputy director at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. You are a family man, a husband, a dad, to amazing daughters. You're an ordained reverend at St. Paul AME Church in Cambridge. You serve on a number of boards, but two of note, MLAC, and as a trustee of the Himes Foundation. You were once an ADA, active not just in education and voting rights issues, making sure that all of our community is heard and is at the table, and it is just, we will be blessed. So I'm just incredibly grateful that you were here with us this morning. So I just wanted to invite you to make some remarks if you like, and to certainly open us in prayer as we certainly could use it.
Thank you very much, Councilor Janey. It is a privilege and an honor to be before you all this day on, for me, a personally satisfying occasion, but also at very trying times in our nation and in this city. So out of respect for all faiths and religions and lack thereof, let us center ourselves for a moment in prayer. Oh God, many awoke with heavy hearts on this day because you told us in your scriptures, see that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. But somehow as a nation, we have lost sight of your lessons, or we have refused to honor them. Somehow we have become unmoored from our grounding in you, or we have run astray. Somehow we have become indifferent to the suffering, or our passive complicity suggests we never cared. Now we stand preparing to do the work that has been put to our hands, the work of administration, the work of discernment, the work of service. Let that service be done in light of the lessons we have learned from you. Let that service be done in a way that reflects our anchoring in you. Let that service be done in a way that shows that we care. Care for the least among us, the most vulnerable, the sojourners within our midst. For although we know that we should be subject to the laws of the governing authorities, we cannot escape your divine law that requires us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Love does no harm to a neighbor, and therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. So let the work that is done here be done with a spirit of love. Love for the city, but most importantly, love for its people, your people, that we could be that light for the world. For a city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for that. And, oh yes, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, Thank you. And now, if you would just stay right here, because we have another special surprise. Another member from St. Paul AME Church. It is with great pleasure that I bring to you a resident of District 7, an activist and a leader in our community, Ms. Charlotte Nelson. Would you join us here, along with your family? Lori? Yes. Hi, Ms. Charlotte. Thank you so much. So Ms. Charlotte, as I mentioned, is a leader in our community, not just in District 7, but the city of Boston. I came to know you, I think, through your involvement with the NAACP. Folks may know that she's been an active member of several branches of the NAACP since the 1960s, including the Brockton branch, the Boston branch, and NEAC, the New England Area Conference. She is also a member of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee, which is an appointed board of the mayor, and she's also on the Dudley Vision Advisory Task Force, and those are particularly important as we know that we have a lot of challenges throughout different neighborhoods in our city in terms of displacement and gentrification, and so having a strong community voice represent us is particularly important. She has been with Northeastern University since 1979. She is a member of the St. Paul AME Church in Cambridge. She is a mom to Ms. Lori Nelson, who is our new Chief of Resiliency for the City of Boston, doing amazing work, and the grandmother to Malachi, and it's just a blessing to have you. So I just wanted to present, I'm a big believer that we need to honor people when they're here, when they can enjoy it, to give their flowers now, and I know you'll be with us for many years to come, but I thought it was important to publicly recognize you for the work that you've done in our community, particularly in Roxbury. Your activism in the NAACP and all the other boards that you serve on. You've gotten a number of awards, but I wanted to make sure that you got recognition from this body, the Boston City Council, and on this day we are presenting you with this resolution. And I won't go through all of the whereas, because we have several presentations, but just know that this is heartfelt and in recognition of all you do, and I look forward to continued partnership with you. So thank you so much. And we can do some photos after you make some remarks.
Hello, everyone. I am almost speechless, but very grateful that I was able to connect with a lot of people that some of you may know in this room from this beautiful city, going back to the 60s. I won't call names because I'll be here for 5 days. But anyway, thank you so much. And to this young lady, I guess what I can say to Councilor Janey is that I'm glad from my generation that I lived long enough to see another generation move to the public scene for us, all of us, but especially for our people, and that they come with commitment, they come with love, and I am so glad to see that they're functioning the way they are, and they still love our communities, and I will continue to pray for them. Thank you.
Pictures with all the council, so we're going to stay here. You want us to stay here?
Yeah, you don't need to talk.
Here, you come in the center so people can see you. I don't want this computer to block you. And if you want to hold this. Okay.
Is this fine?
Yeah.
Which camera we looking
Just straight here.
Can't look at them all at once?
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. At this time, Councilor O'Malley has a special presentation.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to invite the winner of the 2018 Boston Marathon, Des Linden, to please join me on the dais. I'd also like to invite Tom Grilk from BAA, and if anyone's here from John Hancock as well. John Hancock, folks, thank you. So each year, I have the incredible honor of recognizing a Boston Marathon legend. We began this, I think, 5 years ago with recognizing Dave McGilvery, the race director, longtime race director, Team Hoyt, a father-son team that really encapsulate what it means in the spirit of Boston Strong. Jack Foltz, a great marathoner. Last year, we had Joan Benoit Samuelson, one of the greatest runners of all time. We weren't able to get it together before. I wasn't able to get it together before this year's marathon. We typically do it the Wednesday before the Patriots Day. And boy, am I glad that I wasn't able to get it together because for the first time ever, we have a newly minted winner. The winner of this year, the first American woman to win it in 33 years, and what an amazing day it was. So I'm just going to go through, and good Carrie's ready. I'll tell you when to hit play on this because it builds in the crescendo, which we know the ending. But anyway, if we could just pause that or go back, okay? It's all right. You know how it goes. Anyway. From her roots in California, Desiree Des Linden has competed at every level of running. She started as a high school all-star athlete at Chula Vista, California, two-time All-American. She exceeded at Arizona State and then found herself in the Midwest where her running career really took off. She got silver medals in the 2010 Chicago Marathon as well as the 2015 Toronto Pan American Game. She is a two-time Olympian. She first qualified in 2012 for the London Games, but her dreams of Olympic medals would be sidelined due to a stress fracture in her femur as she was unable to finish the race. It occurred while she was running. Obviously an incredibly heartbreaking setback, but Des would be back at the Olympics 4 years later in Rio, where she came in 7th place. She has a long history, although not a Bostonian by birth. She is an honorary Bostonian. She first ran in Boston in 2007, where she finished in 19th place. In 2011, she set the fastest pace by an American woman, where she finished a heartbreaking 2nd place. In 2014, she was the 2nd fastest American, coming in 10th place. In 2015, she was the fastest American woman, 4th place. She also finished 4th place again last year. Des and I have run 2 marathons together. By the time she is crossing the finish line, I am making my way by Wellesley College, which isn't even the halfway point. That is not even an exaggeration. But I want to talk a little bit about this year's race because it was unbelievable. I didn't run this year. I was down cheering folks on. But my predecessor and our friend John Tobin did run this year, and he was the one. I talked to him after. He said it was like running through a car wash. It was 38 degrees, the temperature. There were 25-mile-an-hour headwinds coming at you. It was cold. It was rainy. It was teeming rain the whole time. The conditions were unbelievable. Now, we knew sort of going into this weekend, before going into that weekend, that there was, because of incredible athletes like Des Linden, there was a chance that a woman could win, an American woman could win it this year. But very few thought the conditions were just just incredibly difficult that at about mile 6, Des said to herself, I don't think that I'm going to be able to finish it. To show what an incredible person she is, what an incredible athlete she is, she talked to some of the other women who were in competition to possibly come in first place, like Shalane Flanagan, and said, what can I do to help you? I'm not going to be able to finish this. Use me to help cut down on the headwind or to pace yourself. Many of us know she actually waited for Shalane to be able to continue. It was remarkable. And then in about mile 22, not quite Mark Siomo's district, just before it, mile 23, she started to feel a little bit better. She pulled ahead. I asked her earlier, when did you know you were going to win? win? And she said, it wasn't until I was 90% down Boylston Street. And then this happened. If we can just re-cue this tape, because it's well worth it. Thank you, Kerry. Maybe get some volume, if possible. Look at that. Look at the weather. You can't even see. And she's from California, so she did train in the Midwest, but this wasn't easy for her. You don't even need the sound, because it's just, this is what televisions across the city and the folks standing at that sacred ground. That's when she knew she was going to win. Amazing. It was. I still get, look at how beautiful Old Glory is. West Roxbury's own Peter Marr to her left. Just an amazing day. I got chills watching that. I don't need to tell you folks about what the marathon means to our city. 5 years after the incredibly dark days, the resilience of this city is the greatest legacy of those people whom we lost in 2013, and very few people exemplify what it means to be Boston strong than Des Linden. That is why I am incredibly honored to announce today that this city council has voted to proclaim today Des Linden Day in the city of Boston. She's our champion, she's our winner. Thank you for all you do. Congratulations.
Thank you. What else can I say? You've seen it all. Yeah, I never expected to be a marathoner. I watched people do that distance, and I thought, wow, what's wrong with them? I came to Boston and ran my first marathon here in 2007, and it changed the direction of my life. I fell in love with the event, and I wanted to do something special in this city on this course and for these great people. And I've come so close. I've gone through the ups and downs, and I've seen, history happen in this city, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the city bounces back. And when I felt like I was ready to give up chasing the dream in 2017, I couldn't let it go. I had to show up one more time, and became my mantra for the last 10 months, year, keep showing up. And I'm glad I did. Thank you for giving me a platform to do what I do and celebrate running, and yeah, thank you.
I'd like to invite all colleagues to come up to take a picture, please. This is it, too. We'll get you right here on this side. Yeah.
Everybody in?
Let me give you that. I'll give you this for the presentation. Thank you. This was great. This was awesome. Thank you.
Moving on to some less exciting business, but thank you, Councilor O'Malley, for making the arrangements for that awesome presentation. At this time, moving on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections, Council Presley, do you have a presentation? Oh, didn't know that. Come on up. Didn't know that. My apologies.
Oh, no. All right, well, we'll get started with the meeting, and I appreciate everyone's indulgence, but this is a day of celebrating winners. And so we celebrated earlier winners in service, in public service, and in community building. We just celebrated a marathon champion and winner, and now we're going to celebrate some of our BPS winners who... For those of you that are not aware, I mean, it's no secret, I'm certainly very passionate about the restaurant industry and the culinary arts. And while all of you are supporting efforts to grow that industry for the critical role that food plays in community and also in economy, we also need to make sure that our workforce is keeping pace with that. And Madison Park has a premier culinary arts program. I hope for us, for one of our council lunches, we'll commission and contract them because they do an incredible job. But in May, I do believe it was in May, and I've participated in this challenge in the past, the Madison Park Culinary Team participated in BPS's Cooking Up Change Challenge, which is actually a national effort, competition. The point of it is to challenge students to create seriously good school food. And because all of you have partnered with me in efforts to improve the quality of school food, we know that is important not only to address food insecurity, to make sure that this food is promoting healthier eating habits, to support cognitive development, and also readiness to learn. And so these students met the challenge head on to create seriously good food. And their winning meal, their winning dish, and they have to prepare this spending no more than $1.43. So $1.43 while also meeting strict nutritional standards. And so their winning dish was sauteed chicken, onions, and peppers with brown rice, fresh tomato, and corn salsa with banana bites for dessert. I know you guys are getting hungry just listening to that, right? And so then they went on to Washington, D.C. after winning the challenge locally to represent us in Washington, D.C. We are so very proud. I'm joined on the dais by Executive Director at Madison Park, Kevin McCaskill, by BPS Food and Nutrition Executive Director Laura Benavidez, and I think our instructor chef, Tonya Larkins, and of course our chefs, and I will name them, Joanna Lees, Jennifer, Sayama, Ashley, did I get it all right? Close? No. Not at all? Okay, well, they will introduce themselves, okay? And we will make sure the next time you come that you come with that winning dish, okay?
Oh, we did.
Oh, you did?
We have samples.
Oh, we have samples of the winning dish. Fantastic. All right. So we just want to celebrate our local champions and just continue to lift up the incredible success stories and work coming out of our BPS schools each and every day. And so now if someone would like to say a few words, if any of the chefs would like to say something. Or just introduce yourself.
My name is Taya Henderson. Okay. I'm actually a junior here at Madison Park. This is my first competition. Doing this competition actually taught me a lot of things that I didn't think I can do. I didn't think I could make a delicious meal out of $1.43. It was just 3 seasonings. That's all we had. I'm planning on definitely doing this competition next year. It's a really powerful competition. It's not something that's just for fun, but it's also meaningful. And I honestly think this should continue on because I honestly think that kids need a healthy, nutritious meal and not what we have today. So
we're working on it.
You know, we are, but I'm a little nervous here. But anybody else want to say something?
I'm sorry, just one other thing that I was remiss to add. This dish will now become a permanent part of the menu. Okay, so that's also an incredible thing.
Hi, my name is Larry Ann Campbell. I'm a freshman, and this is my first competition. And the opportunity of getting to win the competition is really exciting because I just moved to America. So it was really fun. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Artesia Fuentes. I'm in 9th grade. This is my first competition as well. I am so happy that we got this far, especially because Taya actually trained me in 3 hours for the whole dish, and I was ecstatic when I found out that we won. I was over the roof. I'm happy that we got to make the dish. I'm happy that we got to go to finals. Basically, our goal was trying to create a healthy, simple dish that children would like, something that they would want to eat, that they would enjoy. And I feel like even though we didn't win nationals, we feel like we've stepped a milestone and we've got to a goal that we didn't think we were going to reach. So we're happy that we did that.
First and foremost, thank you for having us and noticing and acknowledging our victory. But it's one of the things that we're really proving to ourselves, that our students are capable of great things. And this is just the first of many, many competitions and and success stories that Madison Park will have. So thank you again. We truly appreciate it. But also for Ms. Benavides for her support from Boston Public Schools. It was greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the intent of this competition is clearly, you can hear from the students, it's an opportunity to know all of the regulations that what we have to go through to put meals and menus and recipes together, but for them to also put their spin on it. But knowing the restrictions that we have, not only nationally, but specifically here in Boston, where we're very particular about no antibiotics, no artificial flavors, colorings, preservatives, because we want to be as fresh as possible with our meals. So giving that list to those students and then saying, oh, by the way, it is $1.43, because that's our budget, it truly is a challenge. And here at Madison Park, we had the opportunity to compete in a Boston competition with Madison Park, Boston Day and Evening Academy, and Fenway High School. And Madison took the plate, literally, and they got to represent Boston at a national level. And this is our second annual competition, so we're looking forward to what happens next year as well. So thank you so much for the opportunity to really showcase our students and the great things that they are capable of. So thank you.
We're going to put you guys in the middle.
You are? Okay.
I know. Bring those samples down right now.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Okay, this is the first I'm hearing. Thank you. Thank you again, Councilor Presley, and apologize for that. And thank you for the powerful presentation and for the incredible work that Madison Park is doing that often does not get highlighted. So thank you again. At this time, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes are so approved. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Madam President, would you like me to read dockets number 0973 through 0977?
Yes, thank you.
Docket number 0973, message and order for annual appropriation and tax order for the FY 2019 filed in the office of the city clerk on June 18th, 2018. Docket number 0974, message and order for an annual appropriation for the school department for the FY 2019, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 18th, 2018. Docket number 0975, message and order approving an appropriation of $40 million to the other post-employment benefits known as OPEB Liability Trust Fund, established under Section 20 of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 20, as added by Chapter 479 of the Acts of 2008, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 18th, 2018. Docket number 0976, message and order authorizing the city of Boston to appropriate, the amount of $53,802,817 from the city's capital grant fund in order to provide funding for various transportation and public realm improvements. These projects are aligned with the goals of Go Boston 2030, the city's transportation master plan. The funds shall be credited to the Capital Grant Fund from the Parking Meter Fund, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 18, 2018. And docket number 0977, message and order approving the appropriation of $1,600,000 from the Surplus Disposition Fund, credited to the Capital Fund for the development of master plans, architectural and engineering plans and designs, and for the implementation of such plans and designs for the Boston Common, Franklin Park, and the completion of the Emerald Necklace, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 18, 2018.
Docket 0973 through 0977 will be assigned to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Madam President, could I read docket 0978 and 0979 together?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Docket 0978, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $4,300,000 in the form of a grant subaward from the FY16 HUD Choice Neighborhoods, awarded by the Boston Housing Authority to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund investments in education, public safety, workforce development, economic development, street improvement, public art, placemaking, parks, home ownership, and Wi-Fi. And docket number 0979, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $1,418,872 in the form of a grant for the FFY18 Emergency Solutions Grant awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund programs that provide essential services to unsheltered homeless persons, essential services and operation costs for emergency shelters, and homeless prevention services.
Docket 0978 through 0979 will be assigned to the Committee on Housing and Community Development.
Docket number 0980, message in order to declare surplus city-owned former Boston Redevelopment Authority parcels of vacant land and courthouse, and the transfer, care, custody, management, and control of said property to the Public Facilities Commission. The land located at a portion of 135 Dudley Street, Roxbury, Mass., being Ward 12, parcel 00118000, consisting of approximately 156,788 square feet of vacant land and courthouse, but specifically excluding the portion of the assessors parcel retained for the library use. A portion of 2,406 Washington Street, Roxbury, being Ward 12, parcel 012630000, consisting of approximately 4,480 square feet of land adjacent to the 135 Dudley Street, but specifically excluding the portion of the assessors parcel retained for police use.
Docket 0980 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Madam President, I'll read docket 0981 and 0982 together.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Docket 0981, message in order to reduce the FY18 appropriation for the Reserve for Collective Bargaining by $30,644 to provide funding for the Inspectional Service Department for the FY18 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Boston and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 103, IBEW. And docket number 0982, message in order approving a supplemental appropriation of $30,644 to cover the FY18 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Boston and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 103, IBEW. The terms of the contract are July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, and July 1st, 2017 through June 20th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include a base wage increase of 2% effective the first pay period of October of each fiscal year. The agreement also includes new steps beginning in FY18, filed in the Office of the City Clerk on June 18th, 2018.
Councilor Seomi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Dockets 0981 and 0982 concern an appropriation for the collective bargaining agreement between Inspectional Services and the IBEW Local 103. Docket 0981 transfers the funds from our collective bargaining reserve, and docket 0982 authorizes the use of these funds to pay for the contract. This bargaining unit is made up of approximately 9 members at Inspectional Services. The 2 consecutive agreements extend from July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2020, with an estimated cost of $170,000 over the 4-year period. Language items for this contract include a cap on sick leave redemption upon retirement for current employees and elimination of this benefit for new hires, a move from weekly to biweekly pay periods, and a move to electronic pay stubs. Compensation and other cost items included a 2% wage increase effective in October of each year of the contract, the addition of new steps at a 2% increase from the then existing highest step, one in October 2017 and one in October 2018, and the addition of a new step at a 1% increase from the then existing highest step in October 2019. The supplemental appropriation that we are authorizing today for this agreement is $30,644. The Committee on Ways and Means has held 3 hearings on collective bargaining agreements since the beginning of the calendar year. This agreement is substantively similar, following with similar policy language changes, cost items, step increases, and wage increase schedule that we have seen before. Therefore, I recommend passage of these 2 dockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. At this time, Councilor Siomo, Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, recommends suspending the rules and passage of dockets 0981 and 0982. I will take them separately. So for docket 0981, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0981 has been passed. For passage of docket 0982, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0982 has been passed. Moving on to reports of public officers and others.
Madam President, I'll read dockets 0983 and 0984 together.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Docket 0983, communication was received from Brian P. Golden, Director of the Boston Planning and Development Agency, regarding proposed minor modifications to the Fenway Urban Renewal Plan, project number Mass R-115, with respect to parcel 27. And docket number 0984, communication was received from Brian P. Golden, Director of the Boston Planning and Development Agency, regarding proposed minor modifications to the Government Center Urban Renewal Plan project, number Mass R-35, with respect to parcels 13 and 14, and proposed minor modifications to the Downtown Waterfront Faneuil Hall Urban Renewal Plan project number Mass R-77 with respect to parcel E11.
Dockets 0983 and 0984 will be placed on file.
Docket number 0985, the constable bonds of the following have been duly approved by the Collector Treasurer were received. Makara Brookins, Michael Campbell, Linda Castagna, Anthony Fillo, Claudia Correa, Anne-Marie Flaherty, Raul Jakes, Natalia Lavasco, Daniel Manning, Tawanya Morris Williams, Yvonne Milet, Tashetta Stephen Weston, Yolanda Stinson Tuba, and Nicola Trita.
The chair seeks approval of docket 0985 under the usual terms and conditions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0985 has been approved under the usual terms and conditions. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 0591, order for hearing to discuss and assess the amount and quality of tree coverage in the city of Boston.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I was honored to chair a hearing and be the co-sponsor on this very important initiative alongside my dear friend and colleague at large, Councilor Ayanna Pressley. It was a terrific hearing. Thank you to you, our colleagues who participated and staffs that were there as well. It was nearly 3 hours long. We had a really informative and worthwhile discussion with Commissioner Cook and his team. We then heard from some academics, some folks who've been working on similar issues, the way that we can grow our tree canopy in Boston. In 2014, the last time there was an honest assessment of a flyover, we recognized it's about 24–25% of Boston has a tree canopy coverage. That's a pretty good barometer, but we have an ambitious goal, as we often do in this city, to even go beyond that and hit almost 35% tree coverage canopy by 2030. We clearly have a lot of work to do. We were discussing some ideas and strategies that we can use to grow that in the midst of development, at the midst of using both trees as coverage to help as a coastal city, dealing with floods, dealing with torrential rains and downpours. So it's an exciting time. I'm looking forward to continuing to work alongside Councilor Pressley and the Parks Department, as well as other advocates and stakeholders, many of whom spoke very eloquently and passionately about this very important issue. And I ask that this matter remain in committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Pressley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, thank you to my good friend and chair for a well-run hearing and for expediting the scheduling of this. Appreciate your partnership on this and your stewardship on so many environmental issues. I will be brief because there's a lot of there for us to follow up on. And if we told you all our next steps, we'd be having a much longer meeting. But I will say that, there are things that I learned in the hearing. I already knew going into it that neighborhoods like the Seaport and East Boston are at greater risk. Given their proximity to sea level rise and to climate, and East Boston has only 7% tree coverage, the lowest in the city. And so we have neighborhood organizations like the NOAA CDC in East Boston who have been stepping up with youth that are stipended to fill that gap, but that is not going to allow us to address these disparities in tree canopies throughout the city of Boston. So there are larger goals that we need to meet to grow our tree canopies throughout the city. And then we have to make sure that while we're doing that, that there is an equity in where these trees are with an emphasis, where these tree canopies are with an emphasis on those neighborhoods that are at greater risk to climate, given the role that trees play. The other thing that I learned is that our budget for trees, that budget exists entirely in our capital budget. And I really do think, given the role that trees play in public health, in quality of life, in reducing asthma rates, and reducing stress, that we should be considering trees as a part of our Boston Public Health Commission budget, and also our Boston Transportation Department budget, given the role that trees play in enhancing quality of life and promoting walkability. So right now, that entire budget is sitting in capital. The other thing is that we have a very small number of tree wardens and arborists who are charged with maintaining the preservation and the life of our existing trees. So we are losing trees because of development. We are losing trees because of extreme weather. And so we have to make sure for every tree we're losing, that we are planting and for the trees that we are planting, that they stay alive. And then we've got to be more aggressive in our planting. The last thing that I would share that was also elucidating for me is that Mattapan, comparatively, and Hyde Park are considered to have a greater tree canopy, but that number is misleading because the tree canopy in Mattapan and Hyde Park, most of that is made up by the Neponset. So that is not speaking about the disparity in street trees. So, you know, there's much more work to be done in this space. I look forward to partnering with my good friend and colleague on this. And I thank everyone, you know, all of the advocates, the Garden Club of the Back Bay, the Arbor Way Coalition, NOAA, CDC. I thank the city. I thank our Parks Department, everyone for their participation in what was a very robust and informative hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Docket 0591 will remain in the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks.
Docket number 0535, order for hearing regarding teacher diversity in Boston Public Schools.
Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This Monday, June 18th, we held a hearing on teacher diversity in the Boston Public Schools. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the hearing because I wasn't feeling well, so I do want to thank Councilor Janey for her leadership and her chairmanship of that hearing. I just want to highlight a few points before I turn it over to Councilor Janey for a more fuller report. First, I believe very wholeheartedly that diversity matters. That includes race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation. Oftentimes, the men get forgotten when we talk about teacher diversity in our schools. It's so very important that we do have, we encourage more men to participate in education and in our classrooms. As a mother of 4 boys, some of the most meaningful classroom experiences they have had have been with male teachers, especially their science and math teachers right now, Mr. Charles and Mr. Kidd, as they wrap up their year. Thank you for taking care of them. And secondly, we heard, and we heard it throughout the course of the hearing, about some of the barriers that our teachers face that want to teach in our schools, and in particular the MTEL test. Third, and probably most importantly, we have to focus on the burnout rate of our teachers and the pressures that we put on teachers in the classroom. They need support both for their work and their profession and for their kids so that they can teach. They are not guidance counselors, psychologists, nurses, they are teachers. And we certainly have lots of work to do, but I will leave the rest of it to Councilor Janey, as I'm sure she's got lots more to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Glad to see that you are feeling better and that you're with us today. So on Monday, June 18th, I did hold a hearing. This was a hearing that I had sponsored earlier on teacher diversity. We had a panel from the Boston Public Schools join us, as well as some of our community partners. So we heard from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. They are the lead author of the report, Broken Promises, that was discussed at the hearing. The Boston Teachers Union, of course, was there, the Black Educators Alliance of Massachusetts. We also heard from the Boston Network for Black Student Achievement, and testimony from Fair Test as well. Certainly want to thank all of my colleagues who were able to participate in that hearing. Very important discussion. Certainly want to echo the points that Councilor Sabi George already raised, particularly that around our male teachers. So when we talk about diversity, clearly race, ethnicity, and language is important, but we also need to do much more to recruit, hire, and develop and retain our male teachers as well. One of the takeaways from this was just the importance of not just doing new and different, but doing more of what we know already works. So there are some proven strategies that folks want us to see us come back to. I think, we know that this is not a new issue. It's a persistent problem that we have to tackle. And so as Des Linden has just reminded us, it's important to keep showing up. I think there's a lot more work that we need to do. I look forward to doing that in working session, in partner with my colleagues here, but also with the community partners who were present, and ask that this matter remain in committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. And I'll just add, it was an excellent hearing, and I think painted, or at least continued to highlight the sense of urgency that we have to do in terms of making sure that our teaching body matches the demographics of our schools. And when we got to the metrics that they're using to determine whether or not we're being successful in that matchup, it was, I thought, the wrong metric. And when we looked at what the demographic is for the student body in BPS, and if we use that metric to see if we are meeting that in every school in the city of Boston in terms of our teachers, 0 schools are a success. Some are doing better than others, but 0 came close to the demographics of the student body when it comes to teachers of color. So thank you for holding such a powerful hearing. I look forward to continuing to partner with you in the work. But it was robust, and I thought it did a really great job of painting the scope of the problem and then also highlighting areas where we could do better in terms of solutions. So thank you again, Councilor Janey. Docket 0535 will remain in the Committee on Education.
Docket 0914, message and order approving an appropriation order in the total amount of $8,035,055 from fiscal year 2018 Community Preservation Fund revenues for community preservation projects at the recommendation of the City of Boston's Community Preservation Committee, known as CPC.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of the Community Preservation Committee, docket 0914 was sponsored by Mayor Walsh and referred to the committee back on June 13th. The committee held a hearing this past Monday, June 18th, and it calls for appropriating the funds from fiscal year 18 community preservation for a total of 35 projects, all of whom requested various amounts that were recommended by the Community Preservation Committee, ranging from $5,000 to $500,000. And according to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44B, Section 5, the City Council is required to take action on the Community Preservation Committee's recommendation for the funding appropriations to take effect. There were 35 projects, as mentioned, each one with various funding requests under the following categories. We had 12 projects for historic preservation, 3 projects for affordable housing, 13 projects for recreational use and open space, and 7 projects for blended historic preservation, recreation use, and open space. At the hearing, we heard from Emma Handy, Chief Financial Officer for the city, along with Christine Poff, who's the Director of the Community Preservation Program. Both spoke in support of docket 0914. CFO Handy explained the process for selecting the projects, how it was fair and transparent, and also aligned with the goals of Boston 2030, as well as the city's capital plans, and also meet the legal requirements of the Community Preservation Act outlined in Mass General Laws, Chapter 44B. Director Poff also explained that the CPC received a total of 58 applications and noted that there were no applications from the neighborhoods of Charlestown and Mattapan. So folks that are listening from Charlestown and Mattapan, you got to get in the game, right? So reach out to your district or your at-large councilors, and we're going to help you through that process. But there's very notable and worthwhile projects in both of those neighborhoods that could have been the beneficiaries of some very precious and needed funds. So hopefully they'll get to the forefront of the next round before the CPA. Sam Tyler from the Boston Municipal Research Bureau offered testimony concerning CPA funds that included comments about the blended projects. Mr. Tyler recommended that the CPC reconstruct the numbers concerning the blended projects for reporting requirements to provide better transparency for the public. We also heard from 25 individual applicants, some of who are here today in the chamber, who talked about their projects and the need to receive the funding. They talked about, they gave us an overview of the projects, discussed the impacts that their organizations have on the surrounding community, and described the benefits that the projects will bring to the neighborhoods of Boston. And those were from all over the city. Further, the committee discussed the process, projects and equity, indicating a breakdown of actual surcharges by neighborhood, and asked that that be included on the next round of submissions, which would be helpful as well. And so at this time, as the Chair of Community Preservation, I'm recommending the docket 0914, an appropriation and order, total amount of $8,035,055 for fiscal year 2018 community preservation funds that it ought to pass. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? At this time, I'll just quickly add, thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for holding a hearing, and thank you to Christine and her incredible team for shepherding the committee and the community through this process, and all of the technical assistance that was provided to applicants to make it easier for them to navigate this. You went above and beyond, so thank you, ladies, for your work. And I'll just quickly add, because I heard this concern from some constituents and also raised it at the hearing, there were 2 projects that are playgrounds for schools in the city of Boston. And no one wants to stand up against playgrounds, but these constituents want to make sure that the committee is mindful that there are a lot of projects, historic preservation and housing, that have less access to money within the city of Boston's budget for those types of projects, whereas the BPS budget is obviously larger. And so for me, when I was talking about this at the hearing, I noted the transportation budget, which we always talk about, which is $120 million, frankly, which I think is ridiculous. And I think money in that budget, for example, should absolutely be used to make sure that every school in the city of Boston has a playground for the kids. And the fact that we had to wait for the CPA to make this happen, I think is something that we should be mindful of. And so I wanted to flag that because I raised it at the hearing, and I know some constituents were concerned about that. And I hope that the CPC will take that into consideration when thinking about the projects, historic preservation, open space, and other spaces, as well as affordable housing that has less resources to tap into in the city of Boston's budget. Councilor Flaherty, thank you again for a credible hearing. Christine, thank you for your work in that hearing as well. At this time, Councilor Flaherty, who is the chair of the Committee on Community Preservation Act, recommends passage of docket 0914. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0914 has been passed.
Docket 0264, order for a hearing regarding the usage of surveillance equipment in the city of Boston.
Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I first want to thank Councilor Wu and President Campbell for co-sponsoring 0264. It was a very well-attended hearing that we had last night. Many people testified. Chief Cross and BPD were the first panel. The second panel were many advocates and members of the ACLU. Surveillance and technology allows Boston Police Department to protect our citizens, but we also want our citizens protected as well. This is a very fluid technology. It's a very fluid process. Boston Police Department has committed to work with us, committed to work through this fluid technology as they continue to move forward with these new spaces. We'll hold, they've promised to have several working sessions. We'll bring this to a working session where we continue to make a policy that not only works for the Boston Police Department, but protects our own citizens and our own rights. So at this time, as chair, we'd like to leave this in committee.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
I just wanted to rise to thank the chairman for running a great hearing and to you, Madam President, for partnering. I thought it was really exciting that there was broad consensus at the hearing that, one, we understand technology and data are going to be driving a lot of the way that city services will be delivered now and into the future, and that only makes it more important that there's trust and accountability through legislative and policy protection. So it was great to hear that the representatives and leadership from Boston Police were on board with that. And now I think it's on to tweaking some of the details of what that means and how to make sure we're putting in place safeguards that will continue to apply as everything gets more and more complicated and the technology continues to advance with all of the equipment we're talking about. So thank you both and looking forward to next steps.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Oh, do you want to go? You're the co-sponsor, right?
It's okay.
Before you.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I just rise to commend the makers. Thank you, Councilor Campbell and Wu, for your leadership on this. I also want to thank our community partners, the ACLU, ACE, NAACP, and Urban League, and also just commend the many young people that were there. And it is encouraging to know that we are all on the same page in efforts and wanting to both protect privacy and civil liberties while also keeping us all safe. But the underlying issue here just continues to be the need to build trust. And so I'm appreciative that we all share that commitment and do look forward to next steps and what sort of ordinance might come out of this to ensure all of that. But we just have to continue to be vigilant on all those fronts to both protect privacy and civil liberties and to make sure that we're being thoughtful in these broader conversations about how to keep one another safe without being profiled. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. I'll just quickly add, thank you, Councilor McCarthy, for running an incredible hearing, and thank you for the partnership along with Councilor Wu, and thank you, Councilor Presley, for some of the points you just highlighted. I thought the conversation was very robust. It not only talked about the need for our police department to have the technology to do their work effectively, but striking that balance, not only in terms of privacy and our civil liberties, but also making sure that folks in certain communities feel like they can actually trust the police when they say something. And I think this was a great example of sometimes we do things and we don't inform certain communities. So how do we make sure that they're informed at the beginning when we're thinking about rolling something out? So thank you again, Councilor McCarthy. Docket 0264 will remain in the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0986, Councilors Flynn and Edwards offer the following order: for a hearing to acknowledge and discuss the outreach of the Office of Veteran Services and opportunities and challenges facing veterans and military families in the city of Boston.
Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and I want to thank Councilor Edwards for co-sponsoring this order. The purpose of this hearing is to give the Office of Veteran Services and related departments, including state and federal officials active in helping veterans, an opportunity to provide an update and raise awareness on all the great work that they are doing in support of veterans and military families in Boston. As a disabled veteran, I know the work done every day by our city, from Operation Thank a Vet to the Way Home program, helping serve many veterans, disabled veterans, women veterans, and homeless veterans. Through this hearing, I hope to make the public and veterans and military families more aware of the services available to all who served. I come from a family and community that has always valued service to our country and, equally as important, helping military families. From the South Boston Vietnam veterans that built the first memorial in the country to our fallen brothers, their service will always be remembered. On this recent Memorial Day, I was honored to join Mayor Walsh at the Puerto Rican Veterans Memorial in the South End and at the Chinese American Veterans in Chinatown as well. We have seen every community and neighborhood throughout Boston stand up and serve our country. Every ethnic group, race, religion, color, sexual orientation, young people, OEF veterans, younger veterans, Perkins Post, the McKeon Post, student veterans. I have also been proud to attend recent veterans events at the Carter Post on Blue Hill Avenue with African American veterans, Latino veterans, Asian veterans. All have earned our respect. As a society, let us ensure that we remember and honor them. I'm also proud of the work of Commissioner Sterling and Mayor Walsh. They have worked hard for all veterans and military families, ensuring they are treated with dignity and respect, and just asking for your support on this hearing. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and I wanted to also thank my colleague, Councilor Flynn, for your leadership on this and your continued advocacy for veterans. Well, I'm not a veteran. I am a daughter of a veteran, and one of the things that I have found when my mother retired is oftentimes that when resources are available but you're not you're not connected with them, they're virtually useless. And so what I wanted to make sure in working with Councilor Flynn is that the resources that we are providing, which are necessary, which are great, which are good, are as streamlined as possible. This is not a hearing criticizing at all the efforts of the mayor or Giselle Sterling. If in anything, it's commending their efforts and then saying where there are some methods for improvement, let's hear from the veterans about where that improvement can be and how we will immediately provide those services and make sure that we are going to be standing with them. I also think what's really important when we have this hearing is a matter of letting those veterans who feel unseen to be seen and to have a voice. I'm talking about those who may be transgendered, who are also gay, lesbian. We're talking about a lot of women, people of color who in many cases served our country, are willing to die for this country. And in that service, they are often invisible. And it's to make sure that when we are providing the resources for them as they're coming back from having served, that they are no longer invisible in those resources, that the needs that they have, whether it be in a different language, whether it's understanding the needs that they need for hormone therapy, whatever it is, that we are giving it to them because we acknowledge the service that they've done for this country. I also wanted to note that there are already some wonderful systems already that we learned from the hearing with the Boston Fire Department, where they actually are notified when people are coming into the Commonwealth who have retired or coming here as a veteran, and that we support that effort and maybe streamline those efforts as well to make sure of those things. I just want also people to understand that being a veteran is an honorable and incredible thing, but you do struggle financially, and my family did struggle financially when my mother got out of the Air Force. And so it's important that we not only see these not just as benefits, but as earned real resources that these individuals need to continue and to serve our country. I'm again going to commend my mother for her service, but also what she continues to do. Veterans reach out to each other. My mother runs therapy circles for those returning from Afghanistan and Iraq to this day, as she went back to work with veterans at the VA, and also to make sure that as they're coming back, that we are preparing them and giving them not just the resources, but remembering there's a certain level of service that those of us who may not have put the uniform on, but may have been born into service like myself, or married into service like many wives and partners, or people who had children who chose to serve this country. We serve in a special way as well, and that these resources that we're providing also provide the therapy, because we will welcome our veterans, our family members home, oftentimes when the rest of the country won't. When they would spit in their faces, they were there to welcome them. They'll be there to welcome them, even when all they have to welcome home is a coffin and a flag. So to make sure that our veteran services are comprehensive and for all of us, their family members and them as well, and to make sure that we're celebrating the diversity that they come in. I'm so excited to work with you, Councillor Flynn, and I'm very excited again to work with our Commissioner for Veteran Services and the Walsh administration.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Flaherty, you have
Please
the floor.
add my name, Madam President.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Siomo, Councillor Sabi George, Councillor Janey, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Presley, Councillor Wu, Councillor Zakem, as well as the Chair. Councillor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank the makers for their impassioned.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Edwards, and thank you, Councillor Flynn. I also want to acknowledge that your family is here. I thought you were going to say that, but they're here. They're in the building. They're in the chamber. So thank you to the former First Lady of the City of Boston and your wife and your daughter. Thank you, guys. If Councillor Flynn didn't say it today, he does say it often. He loves his family, and he knows that we don't get here alone without the support of our loved ones and our family. And I see your daughter. I just saw her recently somewhere else. So thank you guys for supporting him, but also for being here on this special day. At this time. Okay. At this time, docket 0986 will be assigned to the Committee on Neighborhood Services, Veterans, and Military Affairs.
Docket number 0987, Councilors Wu and Flaherty offer the following: an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the City of Boston Code, ordinances regarding lobbyist registration and regulations.
Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Madam President, could I make a motion to suspend Rule 12 and add you as a co-sponsor, please?
Absolutely. Any objections? Okay. I am added. Thank you, Councilor Wu.
Well, I just want to start by thanking Mayor Walsh and the administration for making sure the city is having this conversation about fair disclosures and the transparency of lobbying activities, as we're having many important conversations every single day about policymaking, about decisions that affect people's livelihoods, development, education. There's a lot happening in City Hall at the city level, and we were just talking about trust earlier with the conversation on surveillance technology, and this is another way to help reinforce the public trust in government by making sure we are as transparent as possible. So thank you to the administration. I want to thank the Council President and former Council President for their partnership on this. I think having the perspective of folks who have managed the council from an administrative perspective and seeing all the rules and who's interacting with councilors and staff, it has been very helpful. This comes about as an ordinance through the great and diligent research of one of my interns, Vinay, who is a law student at Yale Law School, who looked at every other single municipality's lobbying and ethics ordinances. Many of them have based it off of model legislation that this ordinance is now adapting to Boston's situation. And I'll leave it to the co-sponsors to say more, but I just want to make a note because there's been some back and forth in the media about, home rule petition and ordinance, what are the pros and cons of different formats. And I think for me, I wanted to help contribute to suggesting language for something that we could implement tomorrow, today, at the city level that's within our control, because it is about setting fair and a level playing field for people who wish to do business with the city and influence decisions that are happening that have impacts at the city level. If we want to talk about, can we strengthen the penalties or can we put some real teeth with enforcement by an independent state commission, let's pass the ordinance and then we can do an additional home rule petition that adds that piece to it. If there's conversation about tweaking some of the exemptions to tighten up this language, that is something that I very much welcome. But I think having an ordinance to compare and hopefully to implement will at least set the rules, make sure that the understanding across the board is consistent, is transparent, is accountable, and again, helps reinforce public trust in city government as a partner to what we're doing with community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Take this opportunity to commend our colleague, Councilor Wu, and her staff have done a lot of the heavy lifting on this, as well as you, Madam President, for being attentive. So, and as described, we've had 2 hearings on the matter. The first hearing was held back on January 17th of 2017. We heard from Katie King and Chris English, who had testified on behalf of the administration. And at that hearing, there was a whole bunch of procedural and legal questions that were brought up, which then led to a second hearing, which was on April 28th of 2017. And at that hearing, we heard from Madam Clerk, we heard from Boston Municipal Research Bureau President Sam Tyler. We also heard from former House Counsel from the House of Representatives, who arguably is probably the most knowledgeable about the subject matter, and that was Lou Rizzoli. And sort of we continue to hit a conundrum in the hearing around a home rule petition, but as Councilor Wu had described, the ordinance has continued to sort of kind of rear its head as that might be a potential venue or opportunity for us to sort of solve the dilemma that we kept confronting. So it's a very complex matter. We have, through Councilor Wu's office, we've looked at other cities for examples as to how to present and implement lobbyist regulations via an ordinance versus a home rule petition. We heard recommendations, say, for example, Sam Tyler thought we should go the route of either a blue ribbon commission and or have just an outside independent counsel take a shot at it. So we've run the gamut, and I just felt it was important. Maybe we could have a situation where we'll have a working session and we literally have the home rule petition and the ordinance right in front of us, and colleagues can make an informed decision. And it could be a situation where it's an either or it could be a blended version that we might be able to amend the home rule petition. So it's for everyone to decide for themselves what they think is important, appropriate to address this issue, and welcome everyone's attendance at the working session on Monday. So appreciate everyone's time and attention, and again, congratulations and commend our colleague, Councilor Wu, for a great job in drafting the ordinance. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you, Councilor Wu and Councilor Flaherty, for the partnership, and thank you to Central Staff Christine and Michelle for offering also additional support and getting us this far. We want a government that is transparent, but also allows us to be more accessible and to hold ourselves accountable, and for the public to hold us accountable. And in order to do that, we need to do something in this space. And I agree that the ordinance, I agree with Councilor Wu. I think that the ordinance right now is probably the best route because we want to get things done. As much as I respect our colleagues in the State House, sometimes home rule petitions can take a really long time. And if we're serious about transparency, accessibility, accountability, this, I think, is the best avenue to go. So thank you again to Councilor Wu and Councilor Flaherty for your leadership on this. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Okay. At this time, docket 0987 will be I apologize. Madam Clerk, if you could add Counselor Siomo, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Asabi George, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Janey, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Presley, Counselor Zachem. Docket 0987 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations. Before we move on, I have to acknowledge Counselor Flynn. If you have not seen him, your father is here. And so I have to acknowledge more of your family is here. Mayor Flynn, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. Moving on. So I am informed by the clerk that we have 2 late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to the agenda. Hearing and seeing no objection, the 2 late file matters are so added. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first.
Boston City Councilor Frank Baker, District 3, June 19th, 2018. Dear President Campbell, please be advised that I will not be in attendance at the Boston City Council meeting on Wednesday, June 20th, 2018. Please ask the city clerk to read this matter into public record. Thank you. Sincerely, Frank Baker, Boston City Councilor, District 3.
The first late file matter will be placed on file.
And the second matter is actually going from green sheets. I don't think.
We have this one, Madam Clerk. I think you gave me your copy.
Sorry about
No,
that.
thank you.
Thank you. Offered by Councilor Zachem, Wu, and Presley. Resolution condemning the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy. Whereas on April 6, 2018, the United States Attorney General's office adopted a policy of separating immigrant families who were attempting to cross the southern border. Therefore, be it resolved that the Boston City Council condemns President Donald Trump and his administration's cruel and un-American policy of family separation, and the City Council supports our federal representatives in their efforts to end these inhumane policies. Rule 12.
Councilor Zachem, I believe, will do Rule 12.
Yes, Madam President, I would ask to suspend Rule 12 and add Councilor Presley as a co-sponsor.
Any objections? Councilor Presley is added. Thank you, Councilor
Wonderful.
Zachem.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, colleagues. I will be brief because there's really not much to say on this subject. I'm heartened by recent news in the last hour that the President claims to be planning to sign something, and I say something in quotations because that's exactly what he said, to end these policies. That's not enough. It's outrageous that these policies were put in place to begin with, that at a border of the United States we have our government, our law enforcement agencies separating families, locking them up, locking children up literally in cages. Some of the discussion I've seen in the past days and weeks about this have drawn appropriate parallels, I think, between the actions of Nazi Germany, between the actions of other totalitarian states, racist states throughout our history. And I am frankly ashamed that the United States government has been doing this at all, never mind where we are today, that there are nearly 2,400 immigrant children, including babies, toddlers, who have been separated from their families. It's outrageous that we're here talking about this. And I know that our colleagues, all of you, and people in the city of Boston will support this resolution. And while there is some strong language in it, I think myself and my colleagues who will be speaking also tempered our language in writing about this. This is just something that, as this city council, from my first day, from my first term here, has routinely stood up and spoken with one voice when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to equity, when it comes to justice, whether we're talking about the Boston Trust Act, whether we're talking about transgender protections, whether we're talking about criminal justice reform, this body has stood up for people whose voice is needed. And while I'm heartened by the fact that there's been some movement on this in the White House, it's not enough. We need to continue moving on this. And the reason there has been even a little bit of a glimmer of a change by this president on this issue is because of actions like that we're going to take today on this resolution. City councils, town councils, representatives, individuals, the hundreds or even thousands, unfortunately, there's a protest happening right now that we cannot be standing with because we're here outside the State House talking about this. These are happening around the country. This makes a difference. This makes a difference what we're doing. And I know people talk about sometimes this is not a city issue. This is a city issue. There are immigrants, documented and undocumented, in our community, in the city of Boston, who are affected by this. As someone whose family came here as refugees from another totalitarian regime 2 generations ago, fleeing Nazi Germany, it certainly does strike home. While we like to think about the United States being a better place, having higher values, being a place that so-called welcomes the stranger. You're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses. There's really not much more to say about how outrageous this president's actions and administration have been. And to claim that the law says that they're supposed to be caging children, that they have no option, is outrageous. Because one, if they had no option, then what's he doing talking about all of a sudden he's going to change his mind? And two, this hasn't been happening up until recently in this matter, in this degree, and setting up people in old Walmarts, in chain link fences, without their parents, without care is outrageous. So I'll stop here because I can go on and on about how disgusted I am by this inhumane behavior, how ashamed I am that this is being done in all of our names by the United States government. So we asking to suspend and adopt this, and I think and I hope that actions like this will no longer be necessary, but sadly I fear that given the Trump administration and their actions, we are going to be continually talking about issues like this here in the Boston City Council and across the country. So thank you, and I want to thank Councilors Wu and Presley for helping put this together, and our staffs in such short order. I will say it's probably one of the easier resolutions we wrote because there's nothing to argue about here. There is only one answer on this question. So thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
You sure? Okay. All right. Thank you, Councilor Zakhem and Wu, for applying Rule 12 so that I could join you on this. You know, do I think that this resolution that we'll affirm as a body today will reverse the hurt of this racist, cruel, and inhumane policy that is basically mandating child abuse and the separation of families? Probably not, but it's important that we do it. I'm reminded of the invocation of Pastor Hall earlier today, who challenged us to not be passive in our complicity. And that's why we have to speak up and out every single time. But while we are in this new world dichotomy of figuring out how to resist and how to progress at the same time, it's important that while we're outraged about what is happening at the border, that we take advantage of the opportunity before us locally to progress and to advance and to actualize and to codify our values. And that means passing the Safe Communities Act. That means ensuring that TPS recipients have driver's licenses. That means the investment in social, emotional, and trauma supports in our schools to support families living under the threat and the fear constantly of ICE raids and deportation. Ostensibly, you know, we are losing our global standing in the world because we are losing our compassion, our inability to see the humanity in one another. And increasingly, we are becoming isolationist. When you think of those images at the G7 summit, that not only are we saying we're going to go it alone, but we're asking everyone else in this country to do the same thing. You go it alone. It flies in the face of and contradicts every promise and ideal of this country. And it is sad and it is infuriating. But I am proud to serve on this body with each and every one of you. And again, I thank my colleagues for the opportunity to co-sponsor this resolution with you and to continue to do this work together as a body and a city to not only resist what is coming out of Washington every day, but to progress locally, because there are plenty of opportunities for us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Presley. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not going to be able to say much on this one. I just wanted to thank my colleagues for co-sponsoring this. I have not been able to leave the house the last couple of days without breaking down. I'm leaving the house with my babies, dropping them off here at daycare, and just can't help but see, and you know, all of us who care about little ones, who our parents who are caretakers to see the images of little ones being ripped away from their families is just something that we cannot stand for. And this is just one more example of a policy that is designed to distinguish between who deserves to be in this country and who doesn't, who deserves to have access to the opportunities that should be saved for those who look a certain way or come from a certain background. And I think for me, this has truly shaken me to the core, that we have decision makers and policy makers who do not recognize the humanity of us and the ability to see your own babies reflected in the toddlers that are being taken away from their families, that are for life being impacted in this incredibly cruel way. So I'm glad that the council is taking a stand. I thought it was important. I tend not to do resolutions that may not affect direct city business, but in this case, this is personal. This is about our kids. This is about our families, and this is not an isolated incident. So whatever we can do as we're thinking about our city as home to babies and kids and families who come to seek that safety, that vision of the American dream, we have a lot in our own lives, personally and professionally. Thank you, Thank you. That we could be working on with even more urgency every day. So I love all of you guys. I know that our hearts are all in the same place, and miraculously, it seems to have gotten to the president and his advisors that we were going to do this today, but much more to come, and I just appreciate you all so much that it's not a question today. I don't even have to doubt how this vote's going to go, and that we have a lot of families that we're trying to protect and create that space around here in Boston. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleagues, certainly for their emotional and passionate comments this morning. I was sick at the beginning of the week, but I couldn't figure out why I was also angry and tired and frustrated, but I think mostly my emotion was angry about what was happening. And I thought a lot, and I think a lot since this president took office, about my own family's experience. Many of you know that my mother was born in a displaced persons camp. My grandfather was a POW, was a part of the Polish Army. My grandmother worked in a labor camp in Germany. And although she was young by the time she left that camp, the hints and the hint of the memory has had a tremendous impact on her experience growing up here in the United States. And although as a toddler she was living in a camp, she was with my grandparents. They were never separated. She came to the United States in a very different way. She was welcomed. She was, came here with her family, and although they had challenges with language and with getting settled in the United States, they were welcomed. And we did that as a country. And to have such, and my dad had a little bit of a different experience coming to the United States as an Arab a little bit later in time, but they were given this opportunity that we are ripping from these people today. Not post-World War II, not post-World War I, today in 2018. So I think about this very different experience that my mother and my grandparents had, and what we're doing today to people and to their children coming to the United States, again, for a greater opportunity. The reason that my grandparents came to the United States, for my grandmother, for my mother, and for their grandchildren, we have to figure this out. And the fact that we are collectively as a nation standing on the same platform and still, but maybe not, falling on deaf ears It is frustrating, it's upsetting, it's maddening, and it boggles my mind that we're even having our conversations about this. We should be talking about city services, we should be talking about potholes, and instead we're discussing immigration policy. And it has been fouled up at the national level to the point where city councils and town committees across the United States have to take a leadership role. It's backwards. It's really backwards, and it's 2018. Thank you. And please add my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asabi-George. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Asabi-George's name, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Siomo, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Janey, Councillor McCarthy, as well as the chair. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. Thank you to Councilor Zakim, to Councilor Wu, and Council Presley for offering this resolution. I join my colleagues in supporting our federal representatives in their efforts to end these policies that we are seeing play out on the nightly news. Children are being separated from their parents with no plan on how to reunite families. Let us never forget we are a nation and city of immigrants. We all see immigrants every day contributing to our city, making it vibrant. They help to make a part of the fabric of our neighborhoods. They work hard. They pay taxes. They raise families. They volunteer in our neighborhoods. They coach Little League. They are our parents, grandparents, and they are young children. People from all over the world come here, come to Boston in search of a better life for themselves and their children, often seeking asylum as they flee gangs and violence in their home countries. Boston is a better city because of our immigrant roots. The plaque, as Councilor Zakin mentioned, the plaque at the base of the Statue of Liberty reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free." Those are great words that the council highlighted. I also wanted to highlight the Immigrant Gateway Memorial out in front of City Hall that my family was proud to dedicate many years ago. We always welcome the Irish, the Polish, the Vietnamese, Albanians, Armenians, Lithuanians to our city, and today it's a different generation of immigrants. We're welcoming to them. So I'm proud to join my fellow councilors in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. What can I say? What can any of us say? This isn't about politics. This isn't about partisanship. This is about humanity. This is about kindness. This is about who we are as a people. You know, we all know, we all agree what the Trump administration is doing, and they are being enabled by those in Congress right now. What they're doing is wrong, obviously. It's reprehensible, it's vile, it's disgusting, it's heart-wrenching, it's heartbreaking, and it's not American. It's un-American. And it's, as has been said by all of you in words far more eloquent than my own, I mean, this is wrong, and we shouldn't be talking about this, but we have to. I've been a critic in the past when this body has gone sort of off topic, but this is a new time we live in. This is a new world we live in. We have to do this. We have to reaffirm it. It's not going to change anything other than it will show, and it will be hopefully replicated by other cities and other states to say that this is wrong. This isn't who we are. Obviously, I ask that my name be added and look forward to voting in the affirmative on this today. And I just don't know what else to say. Like all of you, I've been watching the news. I've been listening to the audio tape of children crying, of infants crying for their parents. My God, this seems surreal. Sadly, it is not. It is happening. It is happening in the United States of America because of a misguided and a cruel administration that is using this as a political wedge issue. Donald Trump is using this as a wedge issue, just like he did with NFL, just like he did with Colin Kaepernick, just like he always does. And he's going to, I'm sure, use this as an opportunity to either make a play for some other foolish idea, folly that he continues to do, or he's going to use it to fire Robert Mueller this week, because as a society we're focused on something else, and this is exhausting. This administration is exhausting. But we have to fight. We have to stand up for real American values. and that's standing up against what he is doing to these children, to these infants down on the border. Thank you to the authors for their work. Ask that my name be added. Look forward to voting in the affirmative. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor O'Malley, and I'll just quickly also thank Councilor Zakem, Councilor Wu, Councilor Presley, and I know even if we didn't have this resolution, we couldn't have let this council meeting go by without talking about it. We started my team meeting on Monday having this difficult conversation. And as a mother, as a Bostonian, as a Christian, and a believer, and as a leader of a very diverse team with similar experiences to the children we're talking about, it was a very painful conversation in my office on Monday. And I shared with my team members, I haven't felt powerless in a really long time. And as someone who pulls strength from something bigger than me, and everyone in this chamber knows that I talk about my faith all the time, it is truly disturbing, and it's gone to another level when we have our folks in leadership couching these actions, not just in the law, but in a moral sense, in the Bible. This is not what Christianity or any faith is about, ripping children from their families, ripping children from their parents, treating children in such a way. And it's even more disturbing to have folks who present as if they don't care about this issue. Some of those folks are in our families. So to push back on this sense of powerlessness, my team has been brainstorming about how can we show up to make a difference. And I think it's one, having conversations like this in this body, and I know that every single member of this council shares concerns, but also anger when it comes to what is happening. And for that, I appreciate each and every one of you, and I love each of you dearly. But there's ways in which, whether it's volunteering at an immigration clinic, whether it's talking to your own relatives, your own families, your own communities about what's happening, and doing it in such a way that they understand that when you are playing politics with this and thinking about your bottom line, or only thinking about your bottom line and what you may get from a president, and you think you can just sort of put aside what is happening with these children, think again. Because otherwise we're headed down a really dark, dark path for this country. But why I remain optimistic is I know this country has a dark history. And if anything, the silver lining is that we're now talking about it in more open spaces than ever before. This country has a dark history. And so I think about the folks who have either been Irish or Italian coming to the city of Boston where they were excluded, or African Americans, or those who identify as LGBTQ, or anyone who identifies as other, being excluded, and how far we've come for those folks. But I'm also mindful of the trauma that may be triggered within them by watching what's happening. I don't watch TV anymore. We've gotten rid of cable. I think it's a total waste of time. I recommend it. But I know that we'll make it through because we have in other dark circumstances, and I hope that each of you thinks of a way in which to make a difference. And I think there's some small ways that we may not even be thinking about. So thank you again to Councilor Zakem, Councilor Wu, and Councilor Presley for your leadership here. Thank you to all of my colleagues for your leadership. And thank you to all of our team members, whether you're permanent employees, interns, central staff, or city employees who care deeply about this issue too. And we obviously could allow everyone probably here to say something on this because I know everyone cares about this issue. So thank you for showing up to this building every single day to do the work in the face of this ugliness. Thank you for leaving your homes, and thank you, Councilor Wu, for leaving and being here to do the work to make a difference for these families. And I'll leave it at that. I also want to thank the incredible folks in front of us for the work that you guys do. I know that this is also affecting them as well. So at this time, Councilors Zakem, Presley, and Wu are asking for suspension of the rules. Councilor Presley? Oh. Okay. Go ahead. Oh, yes, if you could add my name. They're asking for suspension of the rules and adoption of the second late file matter, this resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution has been adopted. At this time, I wish we could just move on, but we cannot. We're going to move on to the green sheets. Is anyone wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets? Oh, Councilor Presley? Oh, sorry, Councilor Wu.
I pressed your roll.
Okay. Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to pull docket 0718 from page 8 of 11.
In the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, docket number 0842, petition of Local Motion of Boston for a license to operate vehicles for the carriage of passengers for hire over certain streets in Boston. It was referred to committee on 6/6/2018.
Madam Clerk, if you could poll the committee just to make sure it's properly before the council. Thank you.
Councilor Wu.
Yes.
Councilor Wu, yes. Councilor Baker. Councilor Siomo. Yes. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Edwards, yes. And Councilor Presley.
Yes.
Councilor Presley, yes. There is 4 votes in the positive and an absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0842 is now properly before the council. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. I have learned in this new role as committee chair about jitney licenses and hackney licenses. It feels good to be talking about that now. So I want to clarify, because the very first jitney hearing that I had convened, we heard from 2 different petitioners. This one, limo liner, was for the route to operate between Back Bay near the Circle Furniture on Stewart Street St. James Street, St. James Ave, and Framingham in the office park out there. The petitioner came to the hearing with support from the business owner that he would be picking up passengers in front of, as well as with support from the local Transportation Management Authority out in the Framingham, that area, that testified to the need for a more direct route. While there is commuter rail service to the commuter rail station in Framingham, it's an additional 20-minute drive between that station and the office park, and so there's significant interest. We talked about all sorts of conditions on where the bus would idle, whether they'd be fully accessible to people with a wheelchair or a mobility disability. And since then, the petitioner has followed up by reaching out to 2 neighborhood associations that we recommended and doing additional follow-up with the Transportation Department and the Police Department. We've also received documentation from the MBTA that they are comfortable with the pickup zone being at a bus stop as long as it's within a certain time frame. And it actually, the pickup happens before the local business even opens for the day. So I'm putting forward one of the 2 that we heard. The other may address next week, but recommend that docket 0718 pass and that this jitney license be granted.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Just for the record, we read in the wrong docket. So to correct the record, the docket that we are actually discussing is docket 0718, not 0842. So that is the docket that should be before the council. And so at this time, Councilor Wu, who is the chairman of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, recommends passage of docket 0718.
Madam President,
Yes.
could I want to leave space if the district council representing the pickup area wanted to chime in. Councilor Flynn was also at the hearing and asked some great questions, but defer.
Councilor Flynn, do you want to say a few words on this docket? No, ma'am. Okay. Thank you, Councilor Wu. At this time, Councilor Wu, chairman of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, recommends passage of docket 0718. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0718 has been passed. Moving on, I am informed by the clerk that we have 4 late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to the consent agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, the 4 late file matters are added. The chair moves at this time to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Unanimous consent, just to make a condolence statement.
Yes.
Okay. I'll be brief. I must concede that throughout this meeting, I have been thinking about someone who would have enjoyed every element of this meeting, even the heartbreaking moments, and would have been leaning in because we've talked about everything that he dedicated his life to and that he cared about, and that is the Reverend Bill Lesh, who transitioned this past Sunday, and just a force of life and in ministry and community mobilization and empowerment. His daughter, Cynthia Lesh, many of you may know her. She also worked for the city and is a leader in the Codman Square community. He leaves many surviving siblings and children, and I won't name them all right now, do that in a formal thing later, but I did want to say from his twin brother in the Globe, who said, although my brother was not defined by labels, some of the roles most important in his life were loving husband, loving father, loyal friend, lifelong Democrat, progressive Protestant clergyman, urban environmentalist, community organizer, activist, mentor, advisor to youth, hospital chaplain, clinical pastoral education, supervisor, Boston Globe subscriber, and New England Patriots fan. Every morning as soon as it was delivered, he read the Globe and Dorchester Reporter from cover to cover and clipped out articles for future reference. From the year he first registered to vote, he voted in every local, state, and federal election and often worked at the polls. As his daughter Cynthia Lesh Johnson said, my father inspired me along with many others to be a leader. He always led by example by helping others regardless of the circumstance. His legacy will live on through the organizing we will continue to do every day around health policy, the Bold Teens, the Hidden Heroes and Sheroes Award Celebration, and the Codman Square Farmers Market. Just 2 other quick things, just as an example of this extraordinary man and how selfless he was. For so many years, 27 to be exact, living across the street from Cronin Wainwright Park on Brent Street, Reverend Dr. Bill Lesh spent time planting flowers and trying to make the park more attractive and more welcoming. And then he came up with the idea to name the park. He wanted to name it the Peace Park or the President Barack Obama Peace Park. And he was temporarily disappointed when the city decided not to do that, in large part honoring a policy that you cannot name parks for living people. But instead, they did make an exception, and they named it for him. And so we have that place to go to remember him and to build community whenever we so choose. And there will be a celebration of life at Second Church, Codman Square, 600 Washington Street in Dorchester on Saturday, July 14th from beginning visiting hours at noon, and the service will begin at 1 o'clock. Again, that's on Saturday, July 14th. Reverend Dr. Bill Lesh, rest in peace and power. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councilor Presley. Dr. Reverend Bill Lesh was an amazing human being. He was a District 4 resident and supported me from the very beginning. Apparently that was controversial. Had the honor of introducing him to my son, Alexander, before he passed, and just catching up and making sure that we continued to do the hard work, to be dedicated, to bring our faith into the work, and he demonstrated what that looked like. He was an incredible human being, and he leaves behind an incredible legacy that we have to live up to in many ways. So thank you, Councilor Presley, for the presentation, and thank you, Dr. Reverend Lesh, for your service to the city. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I rise to ask for unanimous consent to speak. So certainly want to offer my condolences. Thank you for that warm tribute. Quick reminder on the council luncheon that I am hosting for you immediately after this meeting. It's getting really late. Hopefully you have an appetite. I have with me 2 brothers, Sheldon and Glenn Lloyd, who are entrepreneurs. I want to continue that rich conversation that we had at my first hearing as the chair of small business. And then I'd also like to make a brief statement if that's okay with you, about Whittier
Whittier.
Health Center.
Go ahead.
So I just want to recognize the workers, certainly recognize all the work of my colleagues here on the council. Many of you were at a rally last week. There was another rally this morning. Proud to say that the workers who were terminated last week have been reinstated. I was joined by Councilor Presley at that rally this morning, where we literally escorted workers into the building, so we know that they're there. I want to thank my colleague, Councilor Flynn, for his leadership on this issue as well. And I wanted to make this point because I think it's really easy to criticize and for folks to kind of stand on the sidelines and throw stones. And when the right thing happens, I think it's important to publicly acknowledge that. So I also want to thank the President and CEO, Frederica Williams, for her leadership in all of this, and look forward to a partnership with the health center. They provide very important services in my district, in my community, to the residents of my community, and I hope that we will all continue to stay engaged as this moves forward to offer support not only to the workers, but to the management as they kind of undertake this new role. The election is today, and so we'll see what the results are then. But again, just wanted to publicly thank the workers, the management and leadership team at the health center, and my colleagues here. So thank you so much. And then I hope that people are ready to eat. It's 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Flaherty, for a purpose, do you rise?
Yeah, just rise to make a brief statement regarding someone that's in the hospital. So on behalf of all of us here at the City Council, obviously Madam Clerk, who had served, and also former councilor, former mayor, and former ambassador to the Vatican, Ray Flynn, who also served with John Nucci. So I just want to give some heartfelt well wishes to John, who's recovering at the Mass General Hospital for life-saving kidney surgery. He's probably watching. I think Matt would probably attest to that. He's probably watching us at Mass General. But also to use the phrase that we hear Council Presley use often about a shero, and also really send a congratulations to that young woman, Kerry Abrams, who's a family friend of John, who actually gave the gift of life that allows John to hopefully gain 100% health and recovery. So best wishes to him, and also congratulations and the thanks to that young woman, Kerry Abrams.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you for speaking up. And we will continue to stay in touch with John and, of course, wish him a speedy recovery. Before I move on to memorials, I just want to acknowledge, Michael, are you a veteran, a former veteran?
Yeah, he is. No. Are you Mike? Yes, Mike.
Well, I put a question mark. Michael, former veteran, I wanted to ask, because Michael comes to these meetings all the time and is always here listening to us. And so I just wanted to acknowledge him.
He's the 14th city councilor.
So thank you, Michael, for being here. And as we talk about just connection in this chamber, I just wanted to acknowledge you, Michael, for just consistently being here and being a part of these discussions. Really appreciate you. And then just a couple of technical things before we move on. In terms of hearings, and we had some hiccups earlier in the week. We have a lot of hearings that have been scheduled. There's a lot going on. But in order to make sure that everything runs smoothly, I'm asking central staff not to stack the hearings, at least to put a half hour or an hour in between hearings in case something runs over. In addition, if you are going to schedule another hearing that follows a different chair's hearing, if you guys could touch base with each other to get a sense of how long that person thinks the hearing might last, so that when you schedule yours, it all can run smoothly. And then lastly, I'll add, in terms of presentations, we all love presentations. I know that folks plan their schedule as best they can when they get the agenda and they want to run out of here, and they have engagements after the council meeting. So we'll probably go back to the council rule of limiting it to 2, and whoever pings us first, we will do those 2 presentations and we'll push it off to the next. So those are just some housekeeping things. And thank you to central staff for maneuvering a lot of hearings that have been happening these past couple of weeks. It's been a lot, so thank you to central staff. And moving on to memorials, if everyone could please rise. And I think it's appropriate to acknowledge that today is World Refugee Day. and a member of my team flagged it for me, and this was a day declared by the United Nations, and given what we're talking about, I thought it was important to recognize that. At this time, we're going to adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilor O'Malley, Kathleen Smith, Vincent Ryan. For Councilor Siomo, Alphonse Frasso. For Councilor Sabi George and Councilor Baker, William Fenton. For Councilor Presley, Michael Connolly. And for the entire council, Dr. Reverend Bill Lesh. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, the chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again in this chamber at Boston City Hall on Wednesday, June 27th at noon. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.